Hey designers, it's Kristen from Cut File Classroom, where I share tips and tutorials for designing SVG cut files for Cricut, Silhouette, and other cutting machines. Since Valentine's Day is right around the corner, I thought it would be fun to show a few different ways to draw a heart in Adobe Illustrator. As with many things in Illustrator, there's usually several different ways to achieve the same end result, and that's definitely true with hearts. Give a few of these methods a try and pick the one that works best for you. We're going to make the first two hearts using existing shapes, so they're pretty quick and easy, but I find that the hearts tend to look kind of generic and boring. So the next heart we'll draw using the pen tool, and I'll show how to make an asymmetrical version and a symmetrical version. This next heart we'll draw freehand using the pencil tool, and I'll also show an asymmetrical and a symmetrical version, and then I'll show how to draw an outline heart. If you want to follow along, I've included a link below where you can download this Illustrator practice file, which includes the color palette I used and all of the finished hearts, plus a few of the different working stages so you can see how they came together along the way. For most of these hearts, it can be helpful to have the Smart Guides turned on. So I'll come up to View in the top menu and make sure that Smart Guides is checked. For this first heart, we're going to start out by drawing a square. So I'll press the M key on my keyboard and that chooses the rectangle tool. You can also pull up the rectangle tool here in the toolbar. With the rectangle tool selected, I'm going to press Shift as I click and drag to create a perfect square. Now I can hover my mouse over one of these corners, and once I get this corner arrow, I can rotate the shape. If I press Shift while I rotate, it'll constrain the rotation to 45-degree angles. So once I get this diamond position, I can let go of my mouse. Now I can press Shift-C, and that's going to choose the anchor point tool. You can also find the anchor point tool hidden under the pen tool here in the toolbar. So with the anchor point tool, I'm going to press Shift, and I'm going to click and drag out on one of these top sides, and that's going to create a nice rounded curve shape. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. I'm going to press Shift as I click and drag outward on one of those sides. So that's it for the first heart. It was pretty quick and easy, but like I said, it seems kind of generic to me. But if that's all you want, then this works perfectly fine. For the second heart, we're also going to start with the rectangle tool. So I'm going to press the M key on my keyboard again, and I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to make kind of a tall, skinny rectangle, something like this. And then I'm going to click on one of these live corner widgets, and I'm going to drag it inward. And as we do that, we can see that the corners are becoming rounded. So I'm just going to keep going until it turns red, and I get this pill shape here. So now I'm going to rotate this 45 degrees. So I'm going to hover my mouse at the top corner and press Shift as I drag to the side, and that's going to rotate this at a 45-degree angle. So what I'm going to do next is create a rotated copy of this to create another copy that's crossed over the top, making like an X shape. So I'm going to press R on my keyboard to bring up the rotation tool, or you can find it over here in the tool panel. And that's going to put this little red crosshair in the middle of this shape to signify that that's the center point of rotation. Now I'm going to rotate this and make a copy all at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag to start rotating it. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to press Alt, which makes a copy. And I'm also going to press Shift, which restrains that rotation to a 45-degree angle. So once I have this copy at a 45-degree angle, I'm going to let go of my mouse. So now I have the copy where I want it. And if I go ahead and select both of these, we can see that there is already a heart shape in here. All we need to do is kind of chisel it out. So I'm going to press Shift M on my keyboard to bring up the shape builder tool, and you can also find it over here in the toolbar. And we see this little plus sign next to the cursor. And what that does is as I click and drag through these shapes, it's going to combine them into a single compound shape. Now all we need to do is get rid of these little bottom sections, so I can press Alt on my keyboard, and that turns the plus sign into a minus sign. And if I just click on each shape, it's going to remove them. So now here we have our second finished heart. While these are both quick and easy to do, I find them both a bit stiff and generic. So I prefer to create my hearts using the pen tool. So that's this next method I'm going to show you here. So I'm going to press the P key on my keyboard to bring up the pen tool, and you can also find it over here in the toolbar. And I'm going to start with this top anchor point here and draw the rest of the shape with the pen tool. So I'll start down here and I'm going to click and drag up and to the right to place my first anchor point with a curve handle. And then I'm going to click and drag down to the left, and you can see the curve that's forming here. So once I get a nice curve the way I want it, I can let go of my mouse. And now, since we have Smart Guides turned on, we can see when we have our anchor point lined up with the first anchor point. So I'm going to click and drag down and towards the left. And the handle that I'm paying attention to is actually the one at the top here. So I'm going to tweak that in a bit to make this shape curve in a bit. You can draw yours however you want it. Then I'm going to press the Alt key as I click on this bottom anchor point, and I'm going to drag this one up to mirror this handle here. Then I'm going to let go of the Alt key and I'm going to come up to the side and click and drag up to create this side of the curve. And now to close the heart, I can place my pen tool over the first anchor point and I can see this circle here, which means I'm going to close the shape. So I'm going to press Alt as I click on that anchor point and I'm dragging down and to the right to finish out that curve. Now here we have a heart with a little more personality, I think. It's an asymmetrical heart, and then I can always go back and I can tweak some of these handles. I can move the anchor points around. I can give it even more personality and make it look more the way I want it to. But I think this heart has more of a hand-drawn look, more of personality than the other type over here. So now to create a symmetrical heart using the pen tool, I'm going to start out exactly the same way, but I'm only going to draw half of the heart. So I'm going to go ahead and place my points. I'm going to use the Smart Guide tool to make sure I have those center points lined up. And if I want to make any changes to this half of the heart before I move on, I can press Control or Command on my keyboard and make any changes that I want to the anchor points and handles. And once I have the heart the way that I want it, now I can create a mirrored copy to form the other half and have it be completely symmetrical. So to do that, I'm going to press O on my keyboard to bring up the reflection tool. You can also find that over here in the toolbar. And again, we can see the red crosshair in the center of the shape, but in this case, I don't want to reflect from the center of the shape. I want to reflect it from the center of my heart, which is actually here. So I'm going to click once on the top anchor point to reset that crosshair, and then I'm going to press Shift and Alt as I click right on this bottom anchor point. And that's going to create a mirrored copy on the other side, giving us a nice symmetrical heart. As we can see while I click, these are still two separate halves. Like if I pull this apart, it's a separate half. So in order to make this a complete shape, I'm going to select the whole thing and come to the Pathfinder panel and click Unite. So now this is a single shape. For this next heart, I'm going to freehand draw this with the pencil tool. So I'm going to press N on my keyboard to bring up the pencil tool, or you could find that over here in the toolbar. And with the pencil tool, I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to click and draw freehand the whole heart, and the first one's going to be asymmetrical. So I'm going to start at the middle and I'm just going to drag and draw this the way I would on a piece of paper. And once I get to that center point again, I can close up this shape. Now, let me give it a fill. Now, if you don't like some of your curves and want to tweak them up a bit, you can just redraw over that path. You just want to make sure that you start and end on a path. Otherwise, you're going to draw a completely new line. So just start and end on the same path. And then also while you have the pencil key up, you can press the Alt key to bring up the Smooth tool and click and drag around some of these points to smooth them out. You can also use the Direct Selection tool to make any changes that you want to. Okay, so that's kind of a little more fun. Freehand heart has kind of even more of a hand-drawn feel to it. Let me just make that a little smaller. And it's asymmetrical. So now I'm going to draw a symmetrical heart using the pencil tool. Just like with the pen tool, I'm going to start the same way, but I'm only going to draw half of the heart. So I press N on my keyboard to bring up the pencil, and I'm going to start with the center. And I'm only going to draw half of the heart. And let me give that a fill color. So once again, I can come in with the direct selection tool and make any tweaks or changes here to this side of the heart. You could also use the smooth tool to smooth out any bumpy parts of the path. And once I get it the way that I like it, now I can mirror reflect it to create a copy for the other side and have it be symmetrical. So I'm going to press O on my keyboard, which gives us that red crosshair at the center of the shape, but I'm going to click on this top anchor point to move that crosshair up here. Then I'm going to press Shift and Alt and click once on that bottom anchor point, and that's going to mirror reflect to create a copy on the other side. Now if I zoom in here, I can see that my bottom two paths are crossing each other. They weren't perfectly lined up, and that's totally fine. Just make sure you select those bottom 2 points with the direct selection tool. Press J on your keyboard, which brings up the join tool, which you can also find here in the toolbar. And then just click and drag across those points, and now they've been aligned and joined up together. And then we need to do the same thing. Even though these 2 points do look centered, they're still separate. They're not connected. So I'm going to select both of those points, press J, and swipe across it with my mouse, and now that's a single point. So now we have all of our beautiful heart variations that we've created. So now for this last type of heart, which is an outline heart, you can do this with any of these heart shapes here. I'm just going to click and drag this one and make a copy of it. Right now, this heart has a solid pink fill color and no stroke color, and I want to reverse that. So I'm going to go ahead and press Shift X on my keyboard, and that's going to swap the fill and stroke colors. So now I have no fill color and a pink stroke color. So I'm going to first go ahead and bump up this stroke weight to 10. So now we have a nice thick outline. And if I were to send this to a cutting machine right now, it would cut the same as the rest of these, because this is what your cutting machine is going to see, just a single path. So if we want it to cut like this, we need to first expand this path and make it into its own like vector shape. So to do that, we're going to come up to Object, Path, Outline Stroke. So now we can see that the path has been converted into a vector object. And just looking at this, it looks like there's a few more anchor points than we need. So while I'm at it, I'm actually going to select all of the hearts, and I'm going to right click and choose Simplify, because when it comes to cut files, having as few anchor points as possible is very important. I usually keep my Simplify curve in the 90s, and I usually have my corner point angled threshold in the 140s. So I like the way that looks. And we can already see that it's reduced quite a few anchor points here. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now these hearts are ready to save as SVG files and upload into your cutting software. If you'd like to learn more about designing SVG files for cutting machines, head over to cutfileclassroom.com and download my free Designer's Guide to Error-Free SVGs. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and feel free to drop any questions in the comments below. I'll see you next time.